What's up, guys? This is the Through the Net podcast. This is episode number 1 of the 2021 to 2022 NBA season. It's a very special season for my podcast, and to go along with that same energy, we have a very special guest in Dave Benz. Dave Benz, how you doing, man?
I'm great, Jacob. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic myself. Thanks for asking. To open up the podcast, so I'm pretty sure on air you talked about how you guys get smoothies in New Orleans. Is that true?
Well, it's not. I mean, it is true. We did get smoothies at our game there that we just finished playing, but we had to actually go buy them this time around.
Oh,
So
wow.
we used to get them from the team, but they didn't like getting a bill. So like apparently the people who were providing us with the smoothies over the years, as well as every other broadcast crew in the entire league, they were just going to a concession stand and getting them. And, for a period of, this is years, like 4, 5, 6 years, they were going and getting them. And you can imagine if, they played 41 home games, plus maybe a couple of exhibition games and a couple of playoff games here and there, over the course of 5 years, you're talking about over 200 games. And, they're going and getting 4 or 5 smoothies a night, and they're $7 a piece. Start doing the math, and it comes to tens of thousands of dollars. And, nobody knew that the people running the stand were keeping a tab. And then one day they presented a bill to the team, and the team was like, what the heck is this bill for? So the free smoothies went away. I thought that they had come back right before COVID, but apparently, I don't know if they did come back right before COVID and now they're gone again, but they're definitely gone again now. So we bought our own smoothies while we were there at the game.
Well, they must be good enough to go and buy. Like, they're not just one of those things where you go get them for free because it's free, you know?
No, it's Smoothie King, unfortunately, to the best of my knowledge, is not around in the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
And it is fantastic, and I wish there was one here. And so Smoothie King is definitely worth, I'll drop a couple of bucks for a Smoothie King because it's the only arena, it's the only arena in the NBA where we can actually get that at halftime. So it makes it kind of special.
Right. Yeah, I was talking to a few people within like the sports community here on YouTube, and they were talking about the whole smoothie thing, and I just found it so great. But yeah, when you were talking about how there's just a giant tab, they find out that, there's really at that point thousands of dollars worth of smoothies. Like, I'd be shocked if I was the team. But to move on from that, let's just talk about the game yesterday. That was something else.
The team has been playing at a really high level, and I think I think a devil's advocate point of view of that would be, well, hey, look who they've beaten during this stretch. They've beaten a couple of teams that are struggling and are without their best players. You played. You played the Pelicans without Zion Williamson, and Devontae Graham was out, and Brandon Ingram was just coming back from, he's only been a couple of games back from an injury. And, so you can sit there and say, yeah, it's not exactly like they've been beating the Warriors and the Nets and the Bucks. Obviously they did beat the Bucks earlier this year, so that's nice. But you get my point. This stretch of games hasn't been against the heavyweights. But at the end of the day, I've been calling Timberwolves games a long time, and I've seen them lose a lot of games that they should have won. And I've certainly seen them struggle on a lot of games that they shouldn't have struggled. So for them to come out, take control of a game right away, and, make no doubt about the fact who's the better team, who's going to win, that's a huge step forward for this team.
Right. And you got to beat the team that's in front of you. You can't be worrying about, a team that you're going to be facing a couple weeks down the line. You have to beat the team that you're playing that day. And as you said, you should be beating the teams you should beat, These teams that are worse than you talent-wise, you should be able to go in there and, as they've done the past couple games, get a 20-point lead and just go out there and, make it look like the other team has no shot. And that's something that I've really seen, that you were talking about how, we've seen a lot of just letdowns in the season. And this is, it feels like a change of culture, really. And you could credit that to Patrick Beverly, Chris Finch, Anthony Edwards improving, literally the whole team as a unit. But I know you and Jim are big fans of Chris Finch. And
Absolutely.
I just feel like that man, respect Ryan Saunders. That man, Ryan, is such a good guy, such a great guy. But Chris Finch came in, and it felt like there was just an electric pulse into the team. That felt like we had some sort of hope that, at times we had with Ryan, but it felt like we didn't have it consistently.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I think the thing about Ryan is that it's, I, Ryan Ryan just kind of lacked the experience. That's the
Right.
only thing that Ryan really lacked in my mind. And I think Ryan still has a chance to be a really good coach in the NBA. And to be honest with you, I don't even know for sure how good of a coach he is right now. I don't think anybody can answer that question because Ryan had to coach the team with so many injuries. And, he had D'Lo and Cat on the court together very, very little. And he had to deal with the pandemic, and when he first came in, he had to deal with taking over midstream from Tibbs. So I don't know that Ryan really ever got a fair shake.
Right.
So I'm, and I wish that the circumstances had been different for Ryan because like I said, I think Ryan could still be a really good coach in this league. That said, there's no question that what Ryan lacked, Chris Finch brings to the table. Ryan, Chris has been around. He's coached. He's been on NBA benches for a long time as an assistant. He's coached literally around the world. He's been a head coach over in Europe. He knows what it's like to win championships at the G League and in Europe. He's coached the Olympic team for, the United Kingdom's team. So you want to talk about a guy who has just a wealth of basketball knowledge and experience. Chris definitely brings that to the table. And I think Chris is kind of like the perfect medium between what we saw with Tom Thibodeau and what we had with Ryan. Whereas I think Ryan at times, could be perceived as, being maybe not hard enough on his players and giving them too much slack. Whether that's fair or not, I mean, I don't know what was going on behind closed doors, but that was certainly the perception. And Tibbs was perceived as kind of a tyrant. And whether or not that's fair, I can't say 100% because, again, I don't know what was going on behind closed doors 100%. But I can tell you that from what I see from Chris Finch, Chris is very affable and likable, and that the players really like him a lot. They like playing for him, but at the same time, he knows when he needs to. He knows when he needs to, be in charge and let everybody know that he's in charge. And he has the command and the respect of the team. And I'm not saying that Ryan didn't have that. I'm just saying that, I think it's a little bit different with, Chris coming in and being a little bit, older and a little bit more seasoned and a little bit more experienced. And I think there's something to be said for that.
Right. If you're from Minnesota, or if you're around Ryan, you got a lot of respect for the guy. As you said, he really didn't get a fair shake at the whole coaching gig for the Timberwolves. And I have a lot of hope that whether it's college or the NBA, I feel like he's going to have a lot of experience, soon to come. Obviously, I'm pretty sure he just got hired somewhere. And that's great for him, And, we're just only going to hope for the best for Ryan. And that's something not only people from Minnesota, but people all around the league can root for Ryan Saunders. He's a great guy. But really, overall, though, when we're talking about Chris Finch, he comes in, you're like, okay, he comes in halfway through the season, and this is an offensive guy. And, your offense really does pick up starting with, like, when he comes in. But then starting this year, our defense has been the star of the show. And he's really not been known for his defense. And you can contribute that, as I said, to a lot of different people. But it all starts with the head coach. And I don't know, what is your take on that whole defensive situation and how it's really just like, feels like there's a whole new energy on that side of the ball?
They seem like they're connected. There's a cohesiveness about them that really is something that has been lacking, probably since Tibbs was here. And again, Chris is not necessarily known as for his defensive concepts, but I don't know that it's fair to say that he's not known for his defensive concepts. I just think that, he was so innovative as part of that front wave of changing the way the game was played when he was, with the Houston Rockets G League team in Rio Grande Valley. And they kind of were the test tube, child, if you will, for this modern NBA of shooting threes and getting free throws and getting layups and pretty much totally eliminating the mid-range. And that was what he did in Houston. And he was, so he was on the front wave of that. So I think a lot of people automatically think about that offense and how they change the game when they think about Chris, and they don't necessarily think about the defense. But he's got some really good defensive concepts. They're not playing drop coverage like they were under Ryan. I think this team has excelled a little bit better without playing that style of defense consistently. And then, they still will go into it at times, but it's not really the staple that they're doing. They switch in some zone now and again to throw the other team off and steal a possession here or there, which is great. And, the other thing is they brought in Elston Turner. And Elston Turner, is a guy, he's an assistant coach. He's been around the league a long, long time, and he's seen everything. And I think that he's a guy who, they brought in really to kind of address the defense, and some of the things that he has brought to the table, I think, are part of this as well. But the biggest thing is, at the end of the day, you can credit the coaches all you want, but Patrick Beverley, in my mind, is really the catalyst that has brought all this together. I mean, from the day he stepped on the floor at training camp, he had everybody's attention, and he's been talking to the guys nonstop. He's always in the ear of everybody on the team, the young guys, the veterans. He's in everybody's ear. Everybody's listening to what he has to say, and he clearly has everybody's back. I mean, the very first preseason game back against the Pelicans at Target Center in early October, Patrick Beverley, Karl Anthony Towns got tripped up, and Patrick Beverley ran to his side and picked up the technical.
Yeah.
So like he just showed from the get-go that he is going to, if there's something that, if there's going to be some troubled waters, whatever that might be, he's going to be there to, to fight through it and stand by the guys. And he's just really, I think he's got to be the biggest difference for this defense between and then Jared Vanderbilt, the growth of him, and Jaden McDaniels. They both have really, shown some growth in terms of their ability to defend. And Jaden is only scratched on the surface because he's still picking up a lot of fouls.
Right.
And once he learns how to defend, and play that defense without getting called for the fouls, it's going to be even better. So I don't think we've seen this defense be as good as it can be. And that's, a pretty fun thing to think about because the defense has been pretty good of late.
Yeah. Well, just looking at Jaden McDaniels, really, when you come into the draft, after his high school year, he's viewed as a lottery pick, top 10 pick, borderline. And then he goes to college. He gets a little bit of foul trouble here and there. People think he has a temper. And now we get him at 28, I believe. And he comes in and he's playing like a lottery pick, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And as you said, he's still got a long way to go. As soon as he can figure out, not how to pick up a lot of the fouls that he gets, because a lot of them now are more like young player fouls, where it's like, okay, I over-adjusted on one play and now I picked up a foul, versus a veteran foul where it's like, okay, I'm going to foul because I should foul. And with Jaden, a good friend of the show, Hindu, he actually brought up, what do you think his potential is, not just defensively, but offensively? Like, I know a lot of people compare him to KD or a lot of guys like that, Brandon Ingram, but it's not like that because KD and Brandon, they don't have that defensive intensity that Jaden has shown in his young career so far.
Well, I think the better comparison is Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen was very similar in build, and I think had a similar skill set. I think Jaden's got an ability to handle. He can initiate offense. I think that the shot is going to continue to get better. I think that he can, because of that length, he can defend anybody. So I think that, the names you're saying, I mean, Brandon Ingram, you're talking about an all-star and a guy who, has been just fantastic pretty much these last couple of years. He's gotten better every year he's gotten in the league. And, obviously Kevin Durant is one of the greatest players of all time. And Scottie Pippen is, certainly right there along KD with being one of the greatest players that's ever, suited up in the game. So if you're putting him into those comparisons, then, that's pretty lofty praise for a guy who's in his second year in the league. But, hopefully that trend is going to continue. And I think it will. He's a really smart player. He puts in the work. I've seen him come out and shoot after games are over. He's come back out on the floor and shot at Target Center. So he's a young kid who really loves the game and wants to get better. And that makes me really excited about what he can become.
Going back to Patrick Beverly and, just influencing the young guys on the defensive side of the ball. Have you gotten a chance to talk to Patrick at all?
Not that much. I'd like to be able to talk to him more. My conversations with him to this point have been pretty short. Just seeing him in an elevator. Hey, how you doing? Whatever. Um, I'll tell you a funny story. We were at the hotel in New Orleans, and he came down. Jim, Pete, and I were sitting in the lobby of the hotel, and we were each having a glass of wine. And Jim and I had decided we wanted to order a pizza because there was like no place left to get any food at that point. And so I was on the phone with ordering the pizza when Patrick Beverly came in. So Jim got to have a conversation with him while I was dealing with the pizza place. And by the time I got off the phone, Pat was gone. So I didn't really get a chance. I missed the opportunity to chat with him, but I'm sure more will come as the season goes on.
Right. I mean, I've never been able to talk to Patrick. Hopefully, one of these days I'll be able to get the chance to talk to him. But yeah, I feel like he's one of those guys where it's like on the court, he's all hustle, all heart, all that. But off the court, I feel like he's a fun guy to be around. And that's something that this team really needed. A guy that's a veteran, that is a hard-nosed veteran that's going to be able to do all the small things on the court, but also off the court be able to relate to these younger guys. And that's why I feel like Patrick, like the whole trade with him, receiving him, was just a great fit. And we see that now with arguably, we've had one of the best starts that I've seen in my young, Timberwolves fandom. And that's something I've loved to see in Patrick. And Patrick's, a great guy, apparently, from what I've heard.
There's no question that he is a guy who everybody that he's ever played with loves him because, like I said, he will have your back. But at the same time, everybody who plays against him hates him. They call him Mr. 94 feet because there is no give up in him whatsoever. But yeah, he's very smart. He knows the game. I think he could be a coach someday if he wants to be. He just really understands the game. He understands how to teach the game. And it's like having another coach out there. So yeah, he brings so much to the table and so much to this team that it was definitely a great pickup. I was excited about it when it happened, and I'm even more excited about it now, getting to see what it actually has done to this team.
Yeah, and with Patrick Beverly coming in, as we've mentioned a ton in this podcast so far, that he's really influencing the younger guys. And I want to talk about Anthony Edwards. It feels like in his second season, his basketball IQ has gone through the roof comparatively to his first season in the league. And that's not saying he had bad basketball IQ. It just feels like right now he's not trying to look for shots or search for shots. He's trying to get his teammates open. He's trying to make the right play instead of the play that he feels like he needs to make.
Well, we've seen games where he has had off shooting nights, but he's impacted the game in other ways. He's rebounded. He's locked guys up defensively. He's gotten steals. He's gotten chased down blocks. So I think in that regard, he is wise beyond his years. He's smart enough to recognize that, hey, I'm not really in rhythm with my offensive game tonight, but I'm still going to impact the game, and I'm going to, do these other things. And he's also patient enough to know that his offensive game is not going to be gone for long. So he doesn't try to force it. He lets the game come to him. And then when he does find a rhythm, then he really, exploits it. That's what I love about him. He kind of waits until he feels like he's found something. And then when he does, forget about it. It's lights out. Then he's tenacious about trying to hunt down shots and score. You see far too many guys who try to shoot themselves out of a slump, and they go hunting shots and they try to, force their way out of it. Ant doesn't do that. He just kind of waits and lets the game come to him. But then when it does come to him, he rides that wave of momentum. And so, yeah, I think the basketball IQ was always there. I just think it was a big step for him to make from, having gone from playing half a year of college basketball and then having to get shut down. And really that half year of college basketball should have been his senior year of high school because he matriculated forward and he graduated after only 3 years of high school. So, you're talking about a kid who was really young and got forced into the NBA with no summer camp, barely any kind of a training camp, no real mini camp. And then game 2 of his, rookie season, Cat gets hurt. And then all of a sudden everybody's looking at him like, okay, this guy's the number 1 overall pick. He needs to pick up some slack because Cat's out. So there was a lot on him. So of course he was going to struggle, but I think he picked it up pretty quick. Towards the end of last year, it was fantastic, and he's gotten even better this year.
Right. And a guy with like Anthony Edwards, his skill set is unbelievable. He can drive to the rim, draw a foul sometimes if the refs want to give him it, and he can also knock down the three. And talking about the refs, I don't want to talk about it too much because I feel like you might get in trouble. I don't know if that's the truth or not. Um, but do you believe that the refs can bring an energy? It could be positive or negative for both teams. Do you believe that the refs bring an energy that nobody else can bring?
I've never even thought about that. I don't know that the refs are. I mean, I think the refs are just out there just trying to call the game as it's put in front of them. So to say whether or not they're bringing any energy, I don't know that that's anything I've ever really considered. And I think the best officiated game is a game where you don't even notice the refs are out there. And I think a lot of nights I think that statement holds true a lot more than it doesn't. You always think about the blown calls or, the incidents where the players get upset because they're not getting calls and then the crowd starts, getting into it and chanting or whatever. But I mean, that's going to happen. But do you realize how many calls and no calls that the officials are making over the course of a single NBA game? And I mean, it's literally there's literally thousands of things that they are looking at over the course of a single game. And for how many things that they have to be watching. Did a guy step out of bounds? Did a guy travel? Was it an offensive foul or a defensive foul? Was it a goaltend? Was it a clear path foul? Was it a shooting foul or not a shooting foul? Should there be continuation? All this stuff. I mean, did a guy clear the lane? I mean, there's just so many things that they have to be looking at constantly, and so many decisions that are being made that I think the number of them that they get wrong versus the number that they get right, it's got to be 1,000 to 1 for each one that they get right to every one that they get wrong. And I mean, I literally think it's got to be that high of a number. So I don't think that the refs really bring. I don't think the refs bring an energy. I just think they're showing up trying to call a game. They don't want to be the story. And they're just trying to call the game as fairly as they can. And I think that they do a pretty fantastic job. And it's a job that a lot of times can be pretty thankless because, nobody is really ever going to leave the arena feeling like they were excited about the job the ref did. But they are so important to the NBA. And the game could not be as good as it is without them doing the job they do every night.
Right. And you're bringing up how they make so many calls. And us as fans and viewers, we could be like, oh, the refs weren't very good here. And you're like disagreeing with the call. And then you get a replay of it. And it's like, wow, that was a great call. I would have never noticed that, even if I was that close. They have such good eyes for that stuff. Or even when it comes to small things like, did he shoot a three or was it a very long two? And stuff like that.
It's everything. And like I said, they're looking at things all the time. So, I think that I applaud them, and I applaud the job that they do every single night.
Right. And going off of that, really, it's just like I'm a firm believer that I agree with you that if you don't even notice the refs, then you're having a good game. And I'm a firm believer also to let the players play unless it gets out of hand. Obviously, you're going to want to call the stuff that's obvious, but don't be too ticky-tacky and just have an overall, good game. And that's very difficult for these refs to have just because of how much they're in charge of. And I got a lot of respect for them. But off topic a little bit, I wanted to ask you before we end this podcast coming up here, what was your favorite moment as a commentator for this team?
Oh, hands down, it was game 82 at the end of the 17-18 season when they beat the Nuggets to go to the playoffs and end what was at that time a 13-year playoff drought. That was and the game itself was just – it was a fantastic game. It didn't get decided until overtime, and Taj Gibson comes up with a steal in the corner on Jokic in a key moment of the overtime.
and just the excitement of the team and the players to finally get into the postseason, and just the energy in the building that night. That was far and away my favorite experience with the team. And also the night that Kevin Garnett came back to Target Center, that was pretty awesome as well. There was an unbelievable energy in the building that night, and I would be willing to bet that the majority of Timberwolves fans would actually probably pick the KG game over that game 82. And I understand why they would. My only reason for picking game 82 over that return game for Garnett was, well, twofold. One, because it was in terms of, getting into the playoffs and what the game meant and what was on the line. It was a more meaningful game. And two, unfortunately, I was not here during the Kevin Garnett, years the first time around. So, that really wasn't something that was woven into the fabric of my experience with basketball in the same way that it was the people who lived here and lived it, and went to the arena every night and watched him. So I can understand why people who had that experience and just absolutely idolized Kevin Garnett and the things that he did for this franchise when he was here the first time around, why that night might have meant so much to them to see him come back. And that's why the energy, what it was, was what it was in the arena. But, I unfortunately, I wish I could have been here to see all that. I wasn't. I saw it from a distance, obviously, and I had an unbelievable amount of respect for KG and his game and what he meant to the league and what he meant to this franchise. But I did not understand it on a level that, the people who came to see him play every single night understood it.
Right. I remember watching that game 82, and I remember it going into overtime, and I was running, in my living room, and I'm like, my heart can't take this. I can't watch this. Because it's like, they hadn't made the playoffs in my lifetime up to that point.
Wow.
And so I was born in December of 2003. So prime KG era, I was born, arguably past it for the Timberwolves, right? So I didn't really get to experience that either. And I went to that game where KG was coming back, and I didn't really get that energy, but that's because I didn't know what was up, right? I didn't know how important Kevin Garnett was to the city. And I guess looking back at it, and my parents were telling me about it, there was like everybody was absolutely pumped for him to be back because he's like an idol around here, So, yeah, for me, it was the game 82 because my heart couldn't take it, but we made the playoffs, ended up winning a game in the playoffs, and I was so happy about that.
Yeah, well, hopefully we won't have to wait another 13 years to be in the playoffs. Hopefully this year is the year that we go back and, maybe even win a playoff series or two, which would be amazing.
Right. And to close off the podcast, one last question. Overall, what are your expectations for this team coming up? Do you expect us to make the playoffs, make the play-in? What do you like to see right now?
Well, I will tell you that I started the season thinking this team was going to be a team that, would be right around 500, which I thought would put us at least into the play-in tournament. And I am optimistic that is still going to be the case. We're going to learn a lot about this team, though, over the next 7 games because they've got 7 straight games coming up against the Eastern Conference. And every one of the teams that they're going to play over these next 7 games is a team that very likely could be in the playoffs in the East. You got Miami tomorrow night. Then you go and you play Charlotte, who's playing fantastic. Philadelphia, who, I'm not sure what's going to happen with Philadelphia with the Ben Simmons thing. But, Joel's supposed to be back and be healthy. And, as long as he's on the floor, they're going to be awfully tough. And then you're coming back home to take on Indiana. I don't know what to make of Indiana, but I think they're better than their record, and they had a really tough schedule. Then you're back out on the road to take on Washington, who has been one of the surprise teams of the league. Then you're going to Brooklyn to take on KD and Harden and the Nets. And then you're coming back here to take on the Atlanta Hawks, who went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. So, this next stretch of 7 games, I think we're going to learn a lot about this team. If they could be over 500 in these next 7 games, I would take that all day long. If they could go 5-2, I'd be ecstatic. And anything above that would certainly be house money. But let's see where they're at after this next stretch of games. Plus, it's going to be more of a road heavy portion of the schedule. They've had a lot of home games, so they're going to be going back and forth on the road quite a bit over this next stretch. So we'll see how they handle being on the road. We'll see how they handle playing a run of a long run of consecutive games against teams that could very well be playing in the postseason in the East. And after that, I think we'll have a better read on this team.
Right. Well, thank you, Dave, for coming on the show. That's been the end of the first episode of Through the Net podcast. Thank you guys for watching. There'll be a new episode every week. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.